Welcome back to the Fish Locker Workshop. I've been asked quite a few times by people out on the boat or online or on Facebook, that type of thing, about what type of rods I use and what type of situations I use them in. Now, one of the big things for me, bearing in mind this is just my own opinion from using them and the pros and the cons that I see them. I like ugly stick rods. Now, I've always had them for as long as I've been sea fishing, back to when it used to be like a stiff poker of a rod, to the new style of the new generation of braid rods. Also, a big thing for me is value for money. Now, rods, although if you take care of them, they can last you a long time. I mean, I've got rods now that I've had for over 10 years, and they're still immaculate. But in that type of environment, when you're taking them on boats and you're rocking about, they can get broken, they can get damaged. Now, I'm not one of those people that wants to spend an awful lot of money on something that could potentially get broken. That being said, the rods that I like I say, the GX2 range at the moment. The predecessors were the Ugly Stik Classic braids. Now, I'll go on to talk about those. Those, in my opinion, were superior to these ones, but they were more expensive. At the moment, the GX2 range, they're generally around 45 to 50 quid per rod, whereas the classic braids, they were more like £100 a rod. The first one to talk about is the 12 to 20. Now, it's 7'9". Comes with a standard screw fix reel seat, quite a wide foam grip. It's got a butt section that's about 2 foot long, and it's spigoted to your top section. Now, there's not much you can say about it. It's got the standard glass tip for ugly stick. It's pretty whippy. It's a good rod. I use it a lot for general fishing. If there's any type of fishing that I'm doing which is clean ground anchor fishing, so like for your rays and in less than 100 feet of water, mainly because you don't have to use as much lead, and if there's a low to medium tide run, as soon as you have to start using a lot of lead, it just bends the tip right over and you lose all sensitivity in the rod. Bite detection in the 12-20 is great. You can see everything from like a dragonette bite to a dab. I use it for drifting, select for drifting for place. Perfect rod. I also use it. It's my feathering rod. So mackerel feathers, sabikis, that type of thing. Even baited feathers over clean ground. When you start getting into rough ground, and you start getting a bit deeper or a bit more tide run, it's not quite got it in it. The backbone in the rod. If you hook a good fish and you can let it run, or if you hook a good fish and you don't need to stop it from going anywhere, that's great, because it bends all the way to the butt. And when you slide them together, I don't know if I'll be able to show you this, slide together like that, it sits nice and snug. The only problem with it is if this isn't fully engaged or it's slightly wet. I mean, at the moment it's all lined up perfect. If this isn't fully engaged or slightly wet, like I say, and you strike into something hard and heavy, so like for instance a big eel, what can happen is this twists. So your reel ends up sitting on top and your eyes are all facing down. It's annoying. It doesn't stop you, because all you do is you just turn it back, but at that split second when you need it, it might do it. The step up, like I say, for when you're fishing in slightly deeper water or slightly more tide and you need more lead, is the 20 to 30, which is this one. Now, there isn't an awful lot of difference between the two. The 12 to 20 is 7'9", this one's 7'6". The butt sections, as you can see, just slightly different, got an inch in them. Pretty much exactly the same in construction. You looked at them side by side, they're just a little bit shorter. And coincidentally, the rod blanks are practically identical as well, in the fact that it's just an inch shorter. That's where the 2-inch difference comes from. They look almost the same apart from the 1220. When you start using them, 1220 is just a little bit softer. They do, both of the blanks do fit into the same rod butt. So the rod butts are interchangeable. You could say, for instance, if you were going to go to sea and you weren't sure which one you were going to use, you could take both blank sections and only one rod butt and they would both fit together. The 2030, I use it for shadding. Now, for people who don't understand what that means, it's when you fish with like an artificial lure over wrecks on the drift, or if you're bouncing it over wrecks on rough ground. You're generally fishing for like the likes of cod and pollock and bass. I think it's great for that. It's got a really responsive tip, so it absorbs the lunges of pollock. It's got enough backbone in it that if you need to slow them down, couple it with a good reel. I mean, I fish mine with Daiwa Slosh 30s. It seems to work fine. I like it. If you're fishing soft ground, clean ground at anchor in anything over 100 feet, when you need a little bit more lead, that's what you need. It's supple enough that it still gives you good sport, and yet it's got enough backbone that if you wanted to set the hook into something like a good sized ray or a bullhuss. I also use it for conger, but only in shallower ground. Conger fishing I went out recently and did a conger trip on my own boat, and I took my 30-50, which I'll go into in a minute, and my 20-30, and this was in 170 foot of water, and it just wasn't strong enough. When I was getting a bite, I was setting a hook into the fish and the rod was just arching over. It just didn't have it in it. It was just too deep, too much lead, and the fish were too big. Yep, it's a fish. Getting it out of this wreck's going to be difficult though. It's a good conger reel and it's got itself wrapped around the wreck. Fortunately, there's nothing really you can do there. All it was I could set the hook into him, but I couldn't bully him out. It didn't have it in the rod to lift the fish. If you were picking up conger on clean ground, that'd be great. Just let them run. The same way that I know people that use them for blue sharks. That's fine. Because they're not going into anywhere, they're just going away. So you just play them back. The standard, the standard use for these 30-50s is for bigger stuff. I use it for my congers. So if the recent conger festival that I fished in, all of it was going to be big wrecks, big eels, deep water, heavy leads. 30-50s, perfect. It is a bit of a poker. When I say that, I mean there is not an awful lot of flexibility in that tip, especially when you consider what the 12-20 was like. This one is a bit of a broomstick. For that, your fine bite indication has gone. I remember fishing it, and bearing in mind that we weren't fishing in an awful lot of weather. It was like a pond, and you were straight to it, straight downward braid, great for bite indication. Some of them you couldn't even feel. It's got a lot of backbone, so once you know there's a fish there, you can lean into it and you can really drag them fish out. But maybe a little bit more supple in the tip. The classic braid version, it was like an amalgamation of the two. It had a really nice supple tip like this, great for bite indication, and it just bent all the way into the butt. Quite stiff in the back, so I had lots of power in the blank. I think what Ugly Stik have tried to do here is they've tried to make a cheaper version and possibly not put as much time and effort into making them good rods. They just want to be able to knock them out cheap. Now, the butt section on the 3050, I like it because it's a nice rubber butt like that. Whereas the 12 to 20s and the 2030s, it's quite weak and it's foam and it breaks like that. This one here, tough as hard boots. The spigot section on this, because you use it for heavier stuff, is stepped up again. Whereas before with the 1220s and the 2030s, it was just a simple spigot. This screws into place and sits on a gimbal. You see there, that sits onto a piece in there. It fits together like that and then screws in place. Now, one of the problems that I've found, and I've spoken to other anglers who use this rod and they've found the same. These reel seats, this one here is supposed to be locked in place and this one moves. Obviously you just tighten it up, you put your reel in there and tighten it. This, as time goes on, turns. If you can see there, look. It turns ever so slightly. So when you're looking down the rod, like that, to start off with, you're all perfectly in line. You've got your reel and you've got your eyes. What ends up happening is the reel seat changes and it comes out of line. So you've got your reel sitting like that and all your eyes are off centre. So when you bend into a fish, the line isn't running straight. It drags, and although it is, you can manoeuvre it back, you shouldn't have to. Other than that, it's a pretty decent rod. I can pick faults with it, but that's just being pedantic. I've landed some fantastic fish on them, and for 50 quid, you can't really fall off, can you? You could buy two of them and take them out with you like I do, or take one as a spare, because if one snaps, you've only lost 50 quid, whereas if you're using one of the 250 quid rods, if I snapped it, that'd ruin my entire day. That is the 30 to 50 version, which is 7'4". I generally couple my 30-50 with something big, like a TLD 20. But that's because the stuff that I'm fishing for is generally bigger stuff, and I'm wanting to bully it a little bit if I have to. Like if you're fishing in wrecks, perfect. It's got the backbone to be able to set the hook and to try and edge that fish away from the snags. Your 20-30, kind of in middle ground. It can handle a little bit deeper water and a little bit heavier leads, a little bit more tide, because it's that little bit stiffer. It's got better bite indication than the 30-50, and it's a little bit stiffer than the 20-30. I like it for shadding or for fishing for blonde rays, bullus, congers in shallow water. It can be used for sharks, but that's because you're not going to have to bully them. You're not going to have to keep them away from a snag. You can just let them run. And the 20-30, I use that for a lot of my fishing, but that's because most of the fishing I do is in less than 100 feet of water. It's I like it as a live baiting rod as well. It's fishing with mackerel feathers is underrated. Baited feathers, you catch 15 different species in a trip just on baited feathers. That's the rod that I use for that. Gives you the best sport. Bends right over. It's good bite indication. Like I say, you can be drifting over and you can feel it like a dragonet bite. Whereas the 30-50, you'd be lucky if you felt like a 5-pound fish on it sometimes. Value for money, I think they're alright. They're relatively cheap, like I say. 50 quid. What can you buy for 50 quid now? The things that I think would make it better is, I mean, these rail seats are pretty robust. they're not too bad. But the butt sections on the 20 to 30 and the 12 to 20, crap, they fall apart, the foam just gets knackered. Whereas the butt sections on this, probably because it's going to have to sit in a gimbal half the time, it's pretty good. This section here, all I've done is when it slides round, I've got some thread lock, you know, like some Loctite. I put it on the threads and I've set it myself. But you shouldn't need to. If that locked in place, that would be fine. That would be problem solved. Also, it's not made of great material. I don't know if you can see here. The threads have started to go. Now bearing in mind I've had this rod probably 4 years. It's been on upwards of 75 trips, handled some great fish, but it's showing its age. Now I don't know if I can show you here, but it's starting to, the veneer's starting to go on it. The eyes as well. Oh, one thing with the eyes, they've all got these Fuji eyes on them. Ugly Stik before used to have a roller on the end. I didn't like that, because if you didn't look after them properly, the roller could jam and it damage your line. Whereas these, standard eye, you can't go wrong with it. And it's much easier that if one of them comes damaged, you just take it off, put a new one on, whip a new eye out. I'll put some pictures in here showing you the rods in action. Like I say, this isn't me trying to sell them to you, because I bought all these myself. I mean, I've had them all. Some of these I've had for 3 or 4 years. This is purely how I find them, and hopefully it can maybe help you out if you're making a decision on what you want to buy. I hope it helped.